Yo, Shortbox Nation, this is Botter, and I'm here to tell you right now that con season starts early this year with the return of Northeast Florida's premier anime, comic book, and sci-fi event, Collective Con. That's right, Northeast Florida's largest pop culture convention returns for its 10th year on March 8th through the 10th at the Prime Osborne Center in Jacksonville, Florida. 10 years of Collective Con, they're pulling all the stops out to make sure this is a can't-miss event. And the guest list they got going, don't even get me started on the guest list. I mean, they've got A-list celebrity guests and voice actors from some of your favorite movies, anime, and video games like Elijah Wood and Sean Ashton, Ray Park, Trisha Helfer, Ross Marquand, Max Middleman, and Bo-Katan herself will be there, Katie Sackhoff. Tell me what other convention is giving you the opportunity to meet Frodo and Sam from Lord of the Rings, Darth Maul, and One Punch Man all under the same roof. Only at Collective Con. And if you're looking to get some of your favorite comics signed, or if you want to get an original sketch from some of the best comic artists in the world, well, you're in luck, because there'll be plenty of comic and creator guests there, like DC comic artist extraordinaire Clay Mann, Harvey Award-nominated illustrator John Taylor Christopher, Marvel and DC cover artist Chris Stevens, and acclaimed Star Wars author Timothy Zahn. They'll all be at Collective Con this year. And if you're looking to bring the family, or if you want to make a weekend out of it, you're in luck, because there'll be so much going on at Collective Con that weekend in the form of vendors, fan panels, video game tournaments, cosplay contests, after parties, and a bunch of fan events. You can purchase single and 3-day weekend passes now using the link in this episode's show notes, or by going to collectivecon.com to book your tickets and hotel. Buy your tickets now, and I'll see you at Collective Con, March 8th through the 10th. Now let's start the show. Yo, Shortbox Nation. What's up? It's me, Botter, here to introduce the episode you're about to hear. This is a Shortbox classic from May 2019. It's episode 248, and it's an interview I had with Z Chun, who is the co-founder and publisher of the comic company TKO Studios, aka the publisher of Sarah, the same comic book that we talked about in depth in last week's show. Z Chun is also a very talented writer and director for shows like Gotham and Little America, and he's currently the showrunner of the new Gremlins HBO Max series. So if you listen to last week's show, it really shouldn't come as a surprise as to why we decided to treat you to a throwback today. I mean, we had a lot of positive things to say about TK Studios and what they've contributed to comics in these short but impactful 5 years that they've been around. And when you listen back to this interview and you get to hear from Z about his plan for the company early on and aspiration to change the way readers buy comics, I mean, you can't help but respect what TKO Studios has accomplished even more. So if you enjoy this episode, make sure you listen to last week's show if you haven't already, and definitely treat yourself to a book or two from TKO Studios. And one more thing before I sign off, if you're going to be at Heroes Con in Charlotte, North Carolina this weekend, and fancy yourself a loyal member of the Shortbox Nation, well, guess what? Me, Drew, and Ashley will be in attendance this weekend. Come find us, come say hello, introduce yourself, we'd love to meet you. Hell, ask Ashley for an autograph. But most importantly, make sure you attend one of the 2 panels I'll be hosting. One is on Friday with comic legends Jonathan Hickman and Scotty Young. That's right. I mean, it's crazy. I get to talk to both of these gentlemen at the same time. Come out for that one, or come out to the other one on Saturday. I'll be hosting a panel between fantasy and comic artist Charles Vess and David Peterson, the creator of Mouse Guard. So come out to one of those or both of those. But if you live out of state or you just can't attend the convention for whatever reason, no worries. The plan is to record both of those panels and drop both of them on our Patreon and share at least one of them here on the feed for everyone to enjoy. So regardless, we got you covered next week. I hope to see and meet some of you in person, but until then, I'm going to get out of the way and let 2019 me get this episode started. Catch you next week. Peace. Yo, Shortbox Nation, welcome to episode 248. I'm your host, Botter Milligan, and I'm really excited about this episode, man. This is someone that we've been trying to get on the show for a hot minute, and you guys have also shared your enthusiasm for trying to get him on the show. So I cannot wait to go and get this interview started. You may know him from his directing and writing credits for a bunch of your favorite episodes of Gotham on Fox, or for his writing credits on films like Children of Invention and Cold Comes the Night starring Bryan Cranston. He was also named as one of the 25 new faces of independent films in 2007 by Filmmaker magazine. Ladies and gents, Shortbox Nation, the man I'm talking about is Z Chun, and he's been gracious enough to give me a few minutes to talk about his latest endeavor, a new modern comic book publishing company called TKO Studios, where he's credited as not only a co-founder and publisher, but also a writer for two of the company's titles. Z, how are you doing today, sir?
Hey, I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me on.
No, man, the honor is truly all mine. I wish you just knew how much we've just been hyping up TKO Studios since we were introduced to it.
Well, awesome. I really appreciate that. You know, the fan reaction has been really amazing since launching.
Fantastic, man. Did you get to partake in any of the end game fun this week? Did you get a chance to catch it
yet? I have not. I'm very excited. I actually have not watched. I actually did not even watch the trailer of it because I felt like I just wanted to watch the entire thing. I've seen all those movies and I'm very excited to watch them. Last night was the Gotham season finale, or the series finale. It was the last episode of Gotham ever, so I stayed in and watched that. But I'm planning on checking out Endgame this weekend.
I saw your Instagram post with the last kind of script, and 510 episodes, 5 seasons worth of TV. I mean, man, that's definitely something I can imagine being really proud of.
Yeah, I mean, it was such a fun show to be on. All the other writers, producers, the cast. I mean, everybody was just incredible to work with, and I moved to LA in 2012, but I spent 15 years in New York. So just to be able to return to New York and oversee the episodes and to be able to shoot in some of the coolest locations in New York, I mean, it was such a joy. I mean, the show was really a really profoundly excellent creative experience for me.
How's the reactions or the fan outreach been so far of the series finale being yesterday?
I mean, fans are like, they're really proud of the show, and they're also like really upset that it's ended, which I think is, the appropriate response. Yeah. But, I spent a lot of time on Twitter, just kind of also interacting with the fans and seeing and I do this with both Gotham and also TKO. It's just, I think it's very easy when you're working on something to kind of get into the trenches and kind of forget that the stuff that you're producing is really meaningful to a wide audience. And so I really enjoy, seeing people's reactions on Twitter to Gotham. Cool. and to TKO as well. Just, remembering that this stuff is not just stuff that we create, it's stuff that people read or watch. And it's a really satisfying experience for me to remind myself of like why we're doing this in the first place. And
I got to give you credit, man, that you are very active and approachable on like Twitter and even like the Instagram stuff. Like, I reached out like, hey, big fan of TKO, would love to have you on. And shoot, I think in less than an hour you had reached out like, hey, let's make it happen, man. And that's sometimes rarely the case when it comes to trying to get, just interviews via Twitter or social media. But man, I got to give you props just for being approachable and down to earth, man.
Well, I mean, I think part of it is that as a company, at TKO, we really, really appreciate our fans, and we appreciate, the fandom of comics is so incredible. Yeah. And it's like, people don't do comic book podcasts because of money or because they want to get famous. They do it because they love comics. Good and point. So it's just something where if somebody's reaching out to us, how can we like sit on that? We're just kind of like, we want to talk to you. We love comics. You love comics. Like we're really excited to engage with press and fans and podcasts and in that way.
Yeah.
Certainly.
And speaking about TKO, it was definitely time for us to get into it, man. I was first put onto TKO by a guest co-host that we had on the show back in the beginning of March. It was by a gentleman and a good friend of mine. His name is Austin Wade Ellis, and he runs a comic book themed Instagram page called Reader's Copy. We had him on the show, and he was like, have you guys heard about TKO and this graphic novel they got called Sarah? And I mean, it was just unfolding, as we had the record going on, and I'm sitting here like, what? And he's giving me like the rundown, and yeah, they, you know, you could buy the whole series and all that. And I got excited. So I immediately placed an order, through the site. I bought, Sarah as a trade, and then I bought, the fearsome, excuse me. And I bought your series as well, the fearsome Dr. Fang, as, individual issues. And I had, you know, just started posting through the podcast page, you know, like this does live up to the hype that Austin had. And we had like, a few of our listeners buy comics and send us emails saying, hey, this is amazing. And I want to give those shout outs to those three folks, Nick Wagner, Malcolm Jackson, and John Luna, who all placed orders through TKO's website. And were just flabbergasted at the quality of the books. I mean, they were sending me praise as if like I sent it to them, man. So I definitely want to communicate that to you, that here in Jacksonville,
That's
Florida,
awesome.
man, you've got some really, some new fans. Yo, this is Botter. Sorry for interrupting this episode, but I'll keep it brief. I wanted to let you know about a massive sale we have going on over at the Shortbox store on all of our merchandise and apparel. That's theshortboxstore.bigcartel.com. You can now save 20% off your entire order using the discount code YOO, Y-O-O. So if you've been waiting for the right time to finally buy that gauntlet snapback, or if you ever wanted to buy any of the shirts you see me wear on the podcast, well, now's your chance to get them for a steal. We still have a few sizes left of everything, but they won't last long, and once they're gone, they are gone. And then I mentioned that all of our apparel is screen printed on high quality material. None of that heat transfer or direct to garment stuff. Our shirts are some of the most comfortable ones you'll ever wear, and the hats look even better in person. So wear your support for the Shortbox Nation proudly, knowing that you're going to look damn good doing it. Get to theshortboxstore.bigcartel.com as soon as you can, and don't forget to use that discount code YOO, Y-O-O, to save 20% off your entire order. All of this information can be found in this episode's show notes if you want to get there faster. Thanks for not pressing fast forward. Now back to the show.
That's great. That's great to hear. We wanted to make sure that the books, you know, in terms of the presentation and the quality of the paper and, you know, the sizing of the books, which is a little bit larger than regular comic books, you know, we really wanted them to stand out. So that's great to hear.
When Austin was telling me about TKO, and, you know, I was kind of prepping for this interview, some of the earlier promo I had noticed for TKO involved a lot of like kind of interesting phrases, things like first modern comic company. And then the Hollywood Reporter reported, you know, TKO Studios plans to change how readers buy comics. Can you go into a little more detail about what exactly that means and how your team is accomplishing that mission? What makes TKO Studios so special?
Well, I think when we first started this company, me and my co-founder, Salvatore Simeone, and our editor-in-chief, Sebastian Gerner, and our head of talent relations, Cara McKenney, you know, all of us talked about three kind of guiding principles, questions that we should ask ourselves at every point of, you know, the decision-making process of how we want to put together this company. And all of us kind of, besides Sebastian, all of us kind of came from loving comics as fans, but, you know, we weren't comic book industry professionals. You know, I had worked in film and TV, obviously. So I'd worked in entertainment, and Sal, my co-founder, had come from the business world and the software world. And so we came to it, you know, as outsiders, but really wanted to think the way that comic books were made and distributed. And the three questions that we asked ourselves at every turn were, what is good for our creators? What is good for fans? And what is good for comics? You know, what is good for comics as just an art form? And what we want to do is, in terms of being the first modern comic book company, is we really want to rethink every aspect of the way the comics are put together and distributed, because a lot of those things are kind of antiquated. You know, there are things that exist because of a variety of reasons, of the way that the comic book ecosystem has evolved. But at the same time, some of that stuff is not necessarily the best way of doing things. So I always talk about how I think creatively comics have evolved, and I think we're in creatively a golden age of comics. I mean, every week there's more comics on the shelves that I can read that are all fantastic. It's just I don't believe that the infrastructure and the distribution system has evolved along with the creative side of things. So in terms of how we're going to be the first modern comic book company, you know, that was a phrase that we came up with, and it really revolves around three major things. The first is we binge release our books. So, we were patient. We put together, the first 4 series, all 6 issues were finished by the time that we did 24 full issues of comics and 4 trades.
Wow.
And dropped them all at the same time, essentially on December 10th of last year. So, that comes from the fact that, as if we want to widen out the comic book audience, we have to make it easier for people to read comics. People are not used to, in this day and age, you're used to watching something on Netflix, you're used to watching an entire series, you want to watch it at your own pace. You can binge watch it if you want. And so we want to give people that opportunity to, if they're interested in a book, they can buy it and they can read through the entire thing in one sitting, as opposed to having to remember every month which Wednesday to go to the comic book shop to pick up another 22 pages of story. So that's the first principle. The second one is we provide our books in whatever format you most like enjoying reading your comics in. So whether that's a trade paperback or individual issues in a box set. The other thing we found was that some people like the design of individual issues, but unless you're a hardcore comic book collector, you might not know where to put them. So we have the collector's box that goes great on a bookshelf, and we really want those, people who don't necessarily think of themselves as hardcore comic book fans to be able to pick up those individual issues and have them look great on a bookshelf. And then we have everything digital too. So that kind of came from us thinking, well, the comic book industry sometimes delays obviously it's a different model in that they have to wait till the trade is finished, or the entire arc is finished. But we didn't really have to do that. So we figured, why not make it as easy for people to read these books in whatever format they like reading them in right off the bat, at launch. And the third thing we do is we go around, Diamond. We don't, deal with them. We do deals directly with comic book stores and bookstores.
Nice.
They can order from us and we give them one of the best retailer deals in the industry. We do 50% off of a price and we pay for shipping. And they can order directly from us off of our site, tkopresents.com/vendors. And they know that they can get the books, within 2 to 5 days. So we have some vendors that, within their first time that they ordered, within that first month, they ordered 2 or 3 times. You don't have to be on the Diamond schedule of final order cutoff, things like that. So again, that was what we wanted to make something, make a new way of distributing comics where the vendors, comic book stores, which is where I think a lot of us grew up, falling in love with comics, where we put them into control of the ordering system and gave them an ordering system that did not put them at risk, which I know is always, I love comic book stores. I don't like that they feel like they're constantly on the verge of going bankrupt,
Yeah, and that's one refreshing thing about TKO, because that was one of the things that Austin he had brought in the single issues for Sarah, and they came in that nice box set. And it was just something about it's so refreshing about that I had options as a consumer. It was like, well, dang, sometimes I like to read my books digital, and I can get this book digitally right now straight from these guys, or I can get a sweet, trade paperback, or get the single issues. And it just, I don't know, man, it's just something really cool and unique. And thinking about it holistically, you're like, how has this not happened yet? Why did it take until, 2019, for someone to be like, hey, let's put the fans and the retailers at the forefront. Like, let's give them options. Like, for the longest time, if you were a avid, comic book collector, you had to go through the hoops of, whatever Diamond's ordering process is, or whatever restrictions the comic shops had about ordering a book, or when they could receive it, and et cetera, et cetera. But you guys, it looks like you guys were like, we don't need that. We don't need that. Let's streamline it. Let's make it as efficient as possible, but always putting the consumer at the forefront.
Yeah. I mean, I think part of it was, when we first started this company, I think that both Sal and I and Sebastian and Carr, we have like a very, pragmatic way of thinking about things, where we want to test the theories that we're doing, that we're talking about. But also, when we first started this company, it's not like we were like, okay, well, let's literally change every single aspect of what a comic book company looks like. But then as we started getting into the practicalities of it, we were like, well, just common sense, whether that's creative or business wise, there's no reason for us to do things the way that other people do things. And we can use our strengths to our advantage. And we just Sebastian puts it when he was like, well, we kind of figured if we're going to do some things differently, why don't we do everything differently? Because what's happening right now, I don't believe is necessarily working for smaller publishers. And
one thing I like so far about you, man, is that you weren't afraid to say everyone's least favorite D word when it comes to comic books, diamond. I'm glad that you addressed that directly. And I want to ask about what were some of the other specific problems that you felt were prevalent in the comic industry that you think TKO is solving? I mean, just the high level that you've given about giving fans options. I think that is a great answer to a problem that we've always kind of wanted. I mean, what are some of the other, problems that you guys wanted to address?
I think I can talk about the audience. I think audience building is one of them. And the other one is kind of the comic book publishers' relationship to vendors and comic book stores. So I'll talk about the fandom first. And I think that one of the things that we looked at is, now more than ever, and you look at this with Endgame, you look at this with even non-superhero comic books being adapted. And the viewership for those movies and TV shows that come from comics are so many, they're an order of magnitude that is mind-boggling compared to the source material. So to us, we said, okay, well, let's look at this. It's not the stories or the types of stories that comic books are telling that is inaccessible to people. People like these stories. So what is actually the choke point? And to us, a lot of it was, the serialized format. I mean, I love individual comic books, but I don't love having to wait 6 to 9 months to finish out a story arc.
Oh no, I forget like half of the plot,
and I think that for us, we're like, okay, well, actually, the distribution system and it makes it very difficult for not just the fans, but also the comic book stores. Like. If you're a new publisher, right, you are at the back of the Diamond catalog. Your book is thumbnail, it's an inch tall. And it's just, comic book stores, I understand where they're coming from. They don't have the mental space to go through that back of the catalog, which is kind of a nightmare to look through and take a risk on a new publisher. And we wanted to, so this is getting a little off track, but we wanted to make sure that we were trying our best to expand the comic book audience, and the binge releasing and the other things I talked about were kind of to that goal. In terms of the comic book stores, I think that we wanted to create something that was really positive for them, allowing them to order. I mean, one of the things somebody had asked me, like, well, what do you do about returns? And we've launched 4 months ago. We haven't had a single comic book store ask to return a single book.
Wow, that's impressive.
And that is because when they order, we tell them, order as many as you think you can conservatively sell. They always sell out. And then they know that if they order from us again, they'll get the books back on their shelves in 2 to 5 days in the US. So it's like, they don't have to put themselves at risk in a way that they do if they're fronting all this money for books, knowing that if they run out of them from Diamond, they won't get them back on their shelves for a certain amount of time.
Wow. Yeah, and I'll once again I'll reference the social media aspect. Some of the earlier posts when I started following you guys on Instagram was that you guys were just posting like, hey, new shipment just came in. Hey, like, isn't it like cool when you see like, your books come in, and even like the printing process. And it's like, man, these guys are so transparent, and welcoming. It's like, hey, come take a look at how we do things. And, we're completely transparent. Like, it just gives me that sense of like trust of like, man, these guys look like, not only are they passionate about the comic book culture, but they are truly looking to make a great product and make it easy.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think that's one of the things that we really prided ourselves on early on, and now is just that transparency, and that's transparency with creators that we want with, transparency with the creators that we are working with, and with our fans. You know, I think that there's, in terms of with our creators and our collaborators, you know, I'm a writer and director myself, you know, I don't like it when I am talking to a company and they won't tell me what types of deals they do until we're far down the process. You know, like I'll talk about money, back end, all that stuff in our first conversations with some creators, because I think that, you know, we have the ability to talk about that, and I think that artists need to have those conversations in order to empower themselves, in order to protect themselves. Because I've been in the situation where I'm talking to a producer and they're like, oh, we want you to write a script. And I do 3 weeks of work on it. And in the end, they say, oh yeah, well, actually this would be something that you would write, and then we would try to sell it together, and then you would pay then. And it's kind of like, that's not fair for the artist. So, you know, coming out of that, I just wanted to make sure that us, company dealing with our creators, super transparent, super upfront about everything. And then also with the fans, it's like, you know, I don't think it benefits anybody to have a company acting shady, you know. Like, I mean, that's kind of a simplification of it, but
no,
like, as a fan, I like seeing the, you know, I personally like seeing stuff getting printed and the behind the scenes stuff. So, you know, I feel like, I hope that our fans like seeing that stuff too.
Oh yeah. And it might just be, you know, just for me specifically, but it almost seemed like you guys came out of nowhere, just like really kind of just boom, TKO Studios. We've got, you know, 4 series ready to go. You know, we're here. We're TKO. But I'm sure that there was a lot of prep research on the back end before you guys even launched, like you said, in December. Can you tell us more about maybe some of the specific comic shops you got in touch with, or anyone that you would consider a mentor or like a pivotal source of consultation or information that you guys were reaching out to prior to going live?
Yeah, I mean, I think that for us, Sebastian Gerner, our editor-in-chief, was really an incredible sounding board, because he's worked in comics for the last, 12 years. He's worked at Marvel. He also did a lot of creator-owned. He edited a lot of creator-owned stuff. He's also a writer himself. And for us, just having that perspective of somebody who has worked in every part of the comic book industry and was able to walk us through the pluses and minuses of each part. Because I do think, there's great things about Marvel, there's great things about Image, there's bad things about all companies, but we just wanted to try to take the best of each place and combine them to be something that's kind of undeniable to creators in terms of wanting to work with us. So Sebastian was a great help. We launched on Twitter. Like, we wanted to be, and this is part of our philosophy of being like the first modern comic book company.
Makes sense. Makes sense.
I think in years past, the previous generation of publishers, we would have gone to a comic specific news source, had an exclusive with them, done an interview, and then launched through that news source. But because we were doing so many things differently, we wanted to make sure that we could control the message, and we wanted to talk directly to fans on Twitter and Instagram. So we launched via a 10 post thread, I think, on Twitter in the middle of a Monday. I wrote this Twitter thread that was basically, we want to be the first modern comic book company. These are the people we're working with, some of the top creators in comics: Roxane Gay, Jeff Lemire, Gabriel Walta, Garth Ennis, Steve Ding. We're going to be binge releasing our books. First issue is available to read right now. And then the kicker was like, hey, and by the way, we already exist. 24 issues of our comics are available on our site.
That's awesome.
And we also said, comic book stores, we wanted them to reach out to us. We were like, if you're a comic book store, we'll do a deal with you and give you, we want to be stocked in your store. They're comic book stores are where we fell in love with comics in the first place. And we had actually not had much contact with comic book stores before that, but when that Twitter thread dropped, we were contacted by hundreds of comic book stores, which I was actually surprised about. I think people underestimate how much comic book stores are now starting to be on social media, just based on that interaction alone.
You know, with you bringing up these names, I want to jump into this question I got here. Last week, I had an opportunity to interview Sanford Green at a convention here in town.
Yeah.
And on his own account, he expressed interest. He brought you guys up. You know, we were talking about creator-owned route and working for yourself. And he mentioned, like, hey, man, you know, the guys at TKO Studios are doing great things. He was like, holla at me, TKO. And, you know, that's definitely someone I would love to see on your roster. But you kind of beat me to the punch that your roster so far, I mean, involves some heavyweight champs in the comic book industry. I mean, Garth Ennis, Jeff Lemire, Steve Epting, Gabriel Walters, and the list definitely goes on and on. How did you go about, what was the strategy to reach out to these names and get them involved in what I'm sure from their perspective was like, this seems a little risky. This is definitely something new. I mean, how did you guys give them that confidence that, hey, this is worth, working on?
I think a lot of it was, honestly, a lot of it was cold calling them, up to them at conventions. Cara McKenney did a lot of our talent outreach. The fact that we had Sebastian on, I think, made a big difference because he was a trusted name in editorial. But it was also a process early on getting Sebastian on board too. There was a lot of conversations and us refining what this company really was going to look like. But I think it really came down to the fact that when we got on the phone with them, it was very clear that I think that there's a lot of comic book companies who are starting out where they are in it for the film and TV rights, and they just want to put together a comic book cheaply and put it out. Maybe they might only publish 2 or 3 issues and then go out of business or whatever. But for us, I think that they could tell that we really cared about comic books first and foremost, and they really cared about making the best possible comic book, as opposed to comic books as a gateway into another medium or just like something to bring to a film meeting on the desk. So that was one component of it. And I think the second component of it was by the time we started going out to writers and artists, we had this plan fully formed. And I think it's the type of thing where, no one is in comics because they want to get rich from it. People are in comics because they love the comic book medium, and it's the way that they love to tell stories, and it's the way that they love to consume stories. And so for us, we were really upfront about wanting to do everything differently, a new kind of comic book company. And I think for a lot of people that was really exciting because the thing we kept on hearing was everybody wanted something new to happen in the comic book industry, that they felt that things needed to change, but there wasn't really somebody who had come out with a really viable plan. And, we came out with a plan to do it, and we were very honest about, we were very honest about things that we were going to try to do differently in the comic book space.
I got to give you guys props, man. And I'm coming at it from, I've been on your Twitter. I've been, following you guys on Instagram. And just from the social media alone, I can tell, they've got their hearts in the right place. And I'm happy to support. There was, that was one of the biggest reasons I decided to, put my money where my mouth is and, promote it here on the show, is that it just made sense. And it's like, man, how, I'm just going to bring it up again. It's how have it's 2019 and just now we're getting someone that's the way things, the way comic books are run, it's no, this don't make sense. And we've had quite a few number of comic shop managers. We've all got friends here on the show, friends that work at shops, and you'll go in and, you'll ask about, hey, I'm missing this book, or, hey, did you guys get this? And, they could run their own podcast about, the troubles with a diamond or ordering system, etc. And then you've got you guys coming in you know what? No, we're going to relieve that headache. I just want to, once again, man, just champion what you guys are doing, man. I'm good.
And I think part of it is for the comic book shops, I mean, we wanted to create something that was not only just easy for them to order and reorder, but like, you know, putting ourselves in their shoes. You know, if you're behind the counter and someone's like, "What's good this week?" Right? What's new? You know, I want something new, and they say, "Well, there's a new book by this new publisher," and they're pointing to some book on the shelf. And it's a single issue. You know, it could be the second issue, it could be the third issue. That person then has to go back and see if the first issue is sold out. And then if they do get a sale, it might only be that one issue. Whereas like that same store manager, owner, employee can have that same conversation with somebody, and they can get they can capture that sale for the entire trade or 6 issues of a comic. So it's like, just in terms of the amount of effort that they have to put in to put a new product, like we wanted to make sure that it was worth it for them. And we wanted to incentivize them to really, like, every time they sell one of our books, they're capturing like an entire trade sale or like 6 full issues. You know, you never really get that with a new publisher.
You know, speaking about, I want to definitely put a spotlight on some of the titles that if you go to tkopresents.com that you can go ahead and order now. And I'm assuming these 4 titles are what you guys launched with, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but that's Sarah by Garth Ennis, and Steve Epting. I'll just keep it at the artist and artist level. The Fearsome Dr. Fang by yourself and Mike Wes. 7 Deadly Sins by, once again, yourself and Artem Trakhanov. Is that how you say it?
Artem Trakhanov,
okay. And then Goodnight Paradise by Joshua Dizart and Alberto Ponticelli. Okay. So, and those were the 4 books you guys launched at. And then already, you know, if you guys launched that in December, it's now, you know, end of April. You guys had already started promoting for your new upcoming stuff with the books with Jeff Lemire. You got The Banks by Roxane Gay coming out. And then the one that I'm really excited for, Pound for Pound by Natalie Chaidez.
Oh yeah, that's great. And Andy Belanger,
fantastic, man. And you're credited for writing 2 of the series. The Fearsome Dr. Fang and then 7 Deadly Sins. I wanted to ask, how does your experience and skill set for writing for film and television, how did that translate into comics? Was it easy? Was there any like unique challenges or opportunities that maybe one didn't translate well over, or did they kind of just both mesh really well?
I mean, I think that, you know, when I was a kid, I wanted to be a comic book writer and a comic book artist. And, so I had done, you know, I recently went home to have all the, it's called the Omega Strike Force, and it's like comic books I had drawn and, you know, photocopied and sold to my friends.
Oh, so we all have that folder. We all got that story.
So I think I had always imagined what it would be like to write something. The formatting was very different. And, you know, Sebastian was very helpful in terms of guiding me through that process and just, you know, sending me scripts and then talking about like how a script is formatting, and then going through my scripts and helping me kind of rethink certain scenes. I mean, the thing that was the most interesting part of it was how little dialogue I needed. With 7 Deadly Sins, you know, I had written it out first in kind of more of like a screenplay or like a play format. And then when we started getting into looking at the inks and the colors, I was like, a lot of this story is told just with the visuals. And that was really fun to just pull stuff out before the lettering pass of it.
Speaking about, I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, I was just saying, for no reason.
Phone interviews can be a little challenging that way, but so for the 2 books that you've got writing credits for, Fearsome Dr. Fang and 7 Deadly Sins, for anyone listening right now, that sounds like a pretty cool name. In your words, I mean, what are they about? Like, what's the message for the stories that you wrote?
Sure. So the Fearsome Dr. Fang is a globe-trotting action-adventure story that takes place in the early 1900s. Starts off in San Francisco and ends up going through Shanghai and then deep into China, into Mongolia. So we wanted to tell a story that was kind of like a subversive modern take on like the Yellow Peril, Fu Manchu stories. My co-writer and I, Mike Weiss, you know, we always, you know, you see these dime store, you know, paperback novels where the Asian guy is always like the bad guy and has all these magical powers and it's just like an oriental, you know, scary person.
Yeah.
And we said, okay, well, what if the Fu Manchu Yellow Peril bad guy is actually a good guy who had to put on that persona in order to infiltrate the criminal underworld.
I'm so glad. I'm sorry. No, I'm so glad you brought that up, because that was one of my favorite twists in reading it. Was
awesome.
I thought I knew where the story was going. You know, I was almost a little pessimistic. I'll admit that. I was like, but then when the twist happens, I'm like, oh damn, okay, like yeah, you've got, all right. Let's see this thing through, man.
Yeah, so it's like, so that was kind of the idea, was to kind of rewrite that kind of sad part of our like literary history with something that was like new and interesting, but also like fun. It still was fun. You
Absolutely.
know, the reference points tonally were things like Indiana Jones, where it's like still a fun treasure hunting adventure, but it's got this kind of, you know, new take on the Yellow Peril mythology that I think is empowering for Asians. But also just kind of addresses the racism of the past. And it was just fun. Like just watching, just being able to just think in those, I mean, that's one of the fun things about moving from film and TV to comic books. It was like, you know, the opening set piece in the first issue is a chase through the San Francisco fire, the Great San Francisco Fire. Something that, like, if you wrote it into a screenplay, the line producer would like shoot you in the head immediately because it would be so massively over budget.
Yeah.
So it's just fun to be able to think on that scale.
And then what about Seven Deadly Sins?
So the Seven Deadly Sins it's funny. Some of the inclinations are the same in that, I've always been a fan of Westerns. I love the genre. I love that backdrop. But I also, never really characters that I necessarily identified with on a personal level, because the history of Westerns, especially in Hollywood, it just is what it is. And I wanted to create a new kind of Suicide Squad of taking on a suicide mission in a Western, ones that were death row criminals, but who came from different backgrounds that you haven't necessarily seen in a Western before. So there's like a Chinese surgeon, there's an overweight Confederate soldier who's a cannibal, there's a trans character, and our main character is this kind of marauding bandit, but who has a checkered past. But what you realize is that in this time period, it takes place 2 years after the end of the American Civil War. And it's a time where there's a lot of tumultuous history, and the actual power structure that exists is as bad, if not worse, than any of our bad guys are. And so, by contrast, you know, even though they're bad guys, they're living in a bad world, and that kind of inverted morality almost makes them good guys. And so that was kind of the way that I wanted to approach it. And, you know, I think I love the idea that we were able to do flashbacks, and RTM and Julia did an incredible job creating the visual look of flashbacks. And the idea was to, you know, everybody kind of has a little flashback, and knitted together, it kind of has a new look at the West that we haven't necessarily seen before. Awesome.
So I got to ask, what's your favorite book among the TKO roster outside of your own?
It's really hard. It's
you guys got some solid projects out there.
You know, I think that, you know, we put together all these books and we care about all the books, and it's like it's funny. It's like each book appeals to me in a different way. We want to make sure that the types of stories that we were telling varied in such a way that, you know, what we're finding is when people are buying the books, like, and we're seeing that people are buying either 2 or 3 of the 4, which is really interesting. Like, either that's in one go, or, you know, we're looking and people have placed multiple orders. They'll buy one and they'll be like, oh, wow, like, this is really, I really like this one. I'll try another one. And some people buy all 4 because, you know, the box sets actually combine to create a TKO logo. But I think that there's just something about the fact that none of the stories really step on each other. They're all different enough, but have, I think, you know, a certain level of quality to them. On a personal level, like, I love each book for different reasons. You know, Sarah, I love a war story.
Mm-hmm.
I found that the way that Garth was able to differentiate each one of those female snipers in that story, in the script, and the way that Steve Epting and Elizabeth Brettweiser interpreted those characters. And it's like a really heart-wrenching, complex story that's really in 6 issues, he was really able to capture not just the quiet moments, but the action and a lot of the interpersonal dynamics.
Big time.
Goodnight Paradise. I mean, there's a page. There's one monologue at the end of the first issue. I tear up every time I read it. It's like, and that was the vibe. Every time I got an issue of that script, I was like, this is so heart-wrenching and beautiful and raw. And then there's, the books in this wave, I can talk more about them once they come out, but they all have that thing that hits you in a powerful way, but in a different way. I mean, for me, I think that each of them has their own type of emotional hook that I respond to, which is why we took those books on.
I'm glad that you said what was on my mind as far as each one of your titles feels so different. And I think the phrase that you said definitely exemplifies it best. None of the titles step on each other's toes. It's like it's diverse. That's definitely the word. Like the TKO portfolio is so diverse. Like you were saying, pardon me, Sarah is focused on this group of badass sniper women. Seven Deadly Sins has like a plethora of characters. Fearsome Dr. Fang, like you were saying, is looking to reimagine the stereotype of like old Pulp Fiction titles. Was that like a conscious decision, or is it just how the cards kind of fell in place?
I mean, I think, in terms of our mandate, we always say that we don't publish any superhero comics. And we only really publish, we call them new takes on established genres. But that really can be anything, action, adventure, sci-fi, fantasy. Roxane Gay's book is a heist. Jeff Lemire's book is sci-fi. But that being said, it just has to have those genre bones to it. Like if you look at Goodnight Paradise, it's a murder mystery, but it's set in the homeless population of Venice, California. And it's more about what happens to a gentrifying neighborhood when it's the people who live there or who exist there kind of pushed to the sidelines. So, I think that for us, we wanted to have that genre because there are people who will follow genre across mediums. So people who like True Detective or The Wire, they'll pick up Goodnight Paradise and really enjoy it. But at the same time, we really want it to be a character-driven, emotional story, and a lot of that comes from picking who we have as our creators. I think our creators are as different as the books that we put out, and we were very careful about who we reached out to.
I'll give you guys another prop is hearing you talk about the diversity of the characters and the stories, the sense of inclusion. You guys do a really good job of making it effortless. Like I didn't really think about like, hey, I'm getting a very positive message about inclusion, diversity, etc. And the case is a lot of times some of these bigger publishers, I know some of the critique can be almost force-fed. It's almost like a hard, hey, we're diverse, we're putting a spotlight on this minority group or this, gentrification. But I don't know, man. It's just the way that you guys have chosen your stories and decided to kind of orchestrate it. It's very smooth and it just feels natural.
Thanks. I really appreciate that. I think that, I'm a Chinese American guy who grew up in the United States. So it's something I always think about, but it's also, at the same time, we just want to make incredible stories, and the diversity of both our creators and the types of stories that we're telling. It's just a part of, I think, good storytelling. Yeah.
I want to, you brought up Sarah, and that was definitely one of the books I think myself, Austin had promoted, and the three names I'd mentioned, Nick, Malcolm, and our friend John. That was the common factor amongst all of us that we ordered was Sarah. And I know on your website, you guys have at least I think on the banner when you enter the website, there's a quote from Alan Moore, I believe. And he says something to the effect of, this might be one of Garth Ennis's best works. And it's funny when I saw that, because one of the comments I made while reading Sarah to my friends was, guys, I think this might be Steve Epting's best, and I mean that with full respect. Steve Epting is a phenomenal artist, but something about Sarah, I feel like he channeled just something unique, man. And I want to ask, like, do you feel proud, or can you take credit for, the fact that maybe giving Garth Ennis and Steve Epting the platform to kind of do what they wanted? What do you think that had an impact on them, like really just knocking it out of the park with Sarah?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that a lot of we've done books in a couple different ways. We've done books that the writer and artist have come to us and we've said, okay, this is great. And we've done books where, like for Sarah, Garth came to us with the idea, and we knew that we were going to just surround him with the best possible creative team. And so Steve Epting was somebody that we brought to him. And, I think that for one of the talents of Sebastian and Kara is that, and the entire TKO team is just thinking like, okay, who is actually the best creative fit for this project? And part of it is also, I mean, thinking big. We are able to, like, when Jeff Lemire came to us at Sentient, we didn't know who the artist was going to be. And I think that for us to say to him, well, why don't we go out and get Gabriel Walto? We all love his work. And the fact that we were able to get him, I think, was kind of like, oh, wow, this is actually, like, we can think big, and we can think of, I mean, we always tell I think for writers who work in the smaller publisher space, I think there's sometimes a self-censorship where they're like, well, there's no way we could get this person, so I won't bring that name up. And we always just say, well, let's first talk pie in the sky. In your dream of dreams, who would you want? And because of the way we release our books, we're not on a monthly schedule. We can do deals with the best artists that you could possibly want to work with, give them the amount of time necessary to do the book, or we can wait a few months while they become free and they can do the book then. So I think part of it is just a creative process of how we put these books together, which, yes, I'm very proud of. And part of it is also the way that we do business is really prioritizing the quality of the books over like a monthly release schedule.
Wow. We brought up the quality pardon me, of the books, and I want to make sure to put a spotlight on that, because I think that is one of the elements of TKO that really appealed to me. Was your emphasis on like printing oversized trades or offering the mini formats. On your press kit, it says something to the effect of, our aim is to publish high quality books and expand the comic book audience using modern methods of marketing, distribution, and audience engagement, end quote. I want to know more about the process of deciding, like, your printing process, or arriving to the decision that, hey, we are going to make an oversized book. I mean, did you guys have to? I imagine it probably costs more. I mean, your paper quality is phenomenal, but I feel like I've seen so many startup comic book publishers that don't take that into account. It's always, about the content, but you guys have really paid attention to, when you get that book, at least in my case, when I got that book, I felt like I had bought a quality product.
Yeah, I think that there is the tendency that I'm sure that people have noticed, as printing has become a little more expensive. I think it's little by little, you see comics becoming, I remember when I was collecting comics as a kid, and holding the comic in my hand, there was a level of excitement in terms of the design and the quality of it, even though it was newsprint. Like, I mean, I love the way the newsprint smells and the way it looks. There was just something that was really beautiful about it. And I think as things have become, as the comic book industry has kind of gotten squeezed, just little by little, I've just seen the quality of the actual paper kind of start to drain away. And we wanted to come in with a show of force. We wanted to return comics to that kind of what I remember about comics is that and what I loved about individual issues in the trades were that they should feel like art objects. It's not just about the story and the interior art. It's like, it's something that you hold that has value, that you're excited that you own, and that was kind of the reason why we did, the box sets. We worked with, we really wanted to make sure that the branding was consistent. We worked with Jared K. Fletcher to do all of our trade paperback design and our box design. And that was really like, he designed Paper Girls, and that was where I kind of first noticed his work. And I remember standing in a comic book shop and looking across, it was 25 feet away. And I was like, I can see that book 25 feet away.
Wow.
I know what that is. I know that is a beautifully designed cover, because even from this distance, and I got closer to it and I was looking through it. And then every time I went back to a comic book shop, I remember anybody who was holding Paper Girls, it didn't matter which issue it was. And it was same with like Saga,
Yeah.
If you're 25 feet away from it, you can see it, you know exactly what it is. And so that's what we wanted in terms of our design, our individual issue design, our box set design, our trade paperback design. And that's part of printing oversized as well, is just showing like, listen, let's return these comics to what, I think we all kind of love about them, which is that they're beautiful art objects,
Well said. Well said. Yeah, and you've mentioned a couple of times that you grew up a fan of comic books, and I wanted to just ask a personal question as far as some of your favorite iconic comic books or story arcs or creators that might have inspired you to pursue writing your own comics or influenced you.
I think I started out. It's funny. I started out not reading comics. I started reading the Marvel handbook of comics. With all the characters kind of laid out, and I was like, this is incredible. And then I would read like Book of the Dead and get scared and creeped out. But I just remember reading it and being like, this is the whole universe. It's so thought out. Everybody has a relationship with each other. They have friends and enemies. This is so interesting. And so I collected all those first, and then I started getting into the actual comics. And at that point, I was really into Uncanny X-Men, the Dark Phoenix saga.
Yes,
that
classic.
And I think for a lot of teenagers I think especially for kids of immigrants, like there's something about X-Men, obviously, because they're mutants and they're different from everybody else, that was like a really natural fit for me.
Now that you brought that up, I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Now that you brought that up, you're right about that. I'm an immigrant myself. I grew up in Morocco and moved here with my family, of course. But what I've come to notice is a lot of just minorities just love X-Men. A lot of my brown friends, my immigrant friends, et cetera, love X-Men. And of course, it definitely applies to just the messaging of the X-Men as well.
Yeah. And I think that there's just, it's the fact that they're a family, but they're all different. There's just something about it that really rang true to me at that age.
Agreed.
And then I started getting into, at that time, when you're younger, you just think, a comic book is, same with, I think when you're younger, you watch a movie and you're just like, that's just something that exists. Nobody made it. Just like someone just started rolling a camera and then, it just exists. And then I started getting into like, who are the people who are behind the books? And that's when I really got into Frank Miller. He was like Batman Year One. That was one of the most satisfying things about working for Gotham, was just like, Batman Year One is like it's the comic book that I probably read the most out of any comic book.
Cool.
And I got to meet Frank Miller, actually. I brought my little comic art portfolio once to a Million Year Picnic in Cambridge. I had seen that he was going to be there, and I was going to get him to sign all my books. And I showed him my portfolio. My mom, drove me. I was like 12 years old, 13 years old.
That is awesome.
I showed him my portfolio. He was so nice. He actually had like really specific notes, like,
oh, that's awesome.
The contrast is good here, but you should work on your hands and your feet. And so I was really like starstruck. And then I had him sign Sin City. And then as I was walking away, he just kind of like tapped my mom on the shoulder, and he was like, he's way too young to be reading Sin City.
Frank,
I was like, oh my God, Frank Miller narked on me. Narked on me.
That is an awesome story. What?
Yeah.
And it's like Frank Miller, like the writer of, The Dark Knight Returns, Sin City. And he's like sitting over here wondering, like concerned about a kid's, consumption. That is awesome.
Yeah. And then my mom, it was funny. She brought me out of the, so we walk out of Millionaire Picnic and she's like, oh, show me the book. And she looks through Sin City and she was like, hey, she's looking at the nudity pages and she was like, oh, it's black and white. You can't see anything. You can just take this and read it. It's fine.
Dude, that is awesome.
Yeah. But yeah, and then I started getting into indie stuff. And, I feel like right now there's so many great comic books, but early on it really was the Marvel stuff and Frank Miller's work, and then some of the what series I loved is Legends of the Dark Knight.
Oh my! Real quick, I have to nerd out with you only because last episode I championed how I started reading like Hellboy in preparation for the movie. So I kind of got in this mindset of like, I just need short stories. I kind of want to just read like an anthology series. Yeah. And I had never read Legends of the Dark Knight. So I had bought this trade, like the first trade, and was going through it. And it's right now one of my favorite story arcs or series that I wish I would have read when it was coming out, man. Like the fact that you got 5 issues with this writer and this artist, and then it jumps, and you don't have to worry about continuity. Like, oh man, I love that series so much right now.
And it was one of the things I talked about in my first meeting at Gotham with the showrunner. It was like, my favorite series growing up was Legends of the Dark Knight, and what I found so interesting about it was sometimes Batman is in like one page or like one panel.
Yeah.
It's kind of similar to like Gotham Central, where it's like you're really getting to focus on all the other characters there was just something about it. It's almost like, I mean, every story was different. Like there was like the Two-Face arc that was about him like starting a freak show, I think Matt Wagner did that one. And it was just kind of like, Batman sometimes was not even in it. And then it kind of proved to me, and I think to the readership, that like Gotham and those characters, that backdrop, are interesting enough even without Batman. And so that was kind of what gave me the confidence to write for Gotham.
So I got my notes, actually. I found my notes from that last episode, but I made sure to spotlight like Gothic. So it was the one story written by Grant Morrison and Klaus Johnson. And then Prey by Doug Monick and Paul Gulacy. That one, I mean, there's so many really just good Batman stories from there, and some of them, like you mentioned, you've only got Batman in a panel or two, but once again, to just echo what you're saying, is like that's the power of developing like a well thought out universe. It's just that it's just fascinating. It doesn't matter if the main title character's in it, is because the supporting cast, the rogues gallery, is just so damn interesting.
And I think that that's one of the benefits of like, with something like the Batman universe, where it's existed for such a long time, to be able to tell those, it's almost like Rashomon, where you're telling the Batman story, and at some point you're like, okay, well, actually, what does it look like from the other point of view, And with Gotham, we did 100 episodes. I was only on for the last 50 or so. But I was 60. I kind of lost track. But there was just the ability to say like, well, actually, like Harvey Bullock, like even though he's sometimes very one-dimensional in the comics, like he's played by Donal Logue, who's an incredible actor, and we can tell like a Harvey Bullock arc over the course of this season, and we can tell a really complex Riddler story or a really complex Penguin story.
So I want to get back to TKO, and I've got 2 last questions, and I'll let you go, man. But the first one being, why the decision to make a physical location? If I'm not mistaken, it's in LA, correct?
Yeah, that's right.
Because when you think modern comic shop, and being kind of moving your business to kind of strictly online and having that social media aspect, sometimes you don't think about like the brick and mortar store or being in a physical spot. So why the decision to open up a TKO store?
Well, it's actually really like TKO HQ, and we'll launch in, I think, a couple weeks. So that HQ is actually, we found a place where we can kind of have all of our infrastructure in Los Angeles. We had initially started out with my co-founder in the Bay Area, and people are kind of all over California. And then when we launched, and just the momentum of it, we were like, we actually have to have a central location in order to grow as quickly as we want to. So we signed the lease on this place, and it's actually zoned for retail. So we were kind of like, well, we can have all of our infrastructure in the back, and we can just have a fun HQ where we can sell like merch and our books, or like exclusive signed editions. And it's just, part of it is just, honestly, it was kind of fun to have like a little storefront in the front of the main office where we do like fulfillment and like accounting and stuff like that. And I also think, I go to conventions. Our editor in chief comes with me. He goes to conventions on his own. I do think that for the people who work at TKO, sometimes it's nice for a customer to come in, or reader, and who's just like, oh, I want a TKO t-shirt, and to interact with them. I think it goes back to the idea of like, it's very easy sometimes when you're working on something, you're separated from the fandom, to kind of forget why you're doing it, or to just kind of get into the grind of it. And I think always reminding yourself that there are people who really value what you're doing, and that the books that you're putting out are meaningful to them, like that. I think that's a very important part of who we are.
I think it also emphasizes and echoes what we were talking about earlier that makes TKO so special, is like the sense of transparency, the sense of, here are the faces that you could easily contact, that you could reach out to, that you could see. I think it just only adds and enhances the fact that, people can order the books very easily online, or reach out to you guys on social media, or if they happen to be in the area, stop by and see any one of the creators or the brains behind it and pick up a shirt or whatnot. I think that's such a unique addition.
Yeah, we wanted to have a place too where it's like we could do signings, if somebody was in town, and like, I mean, we're really proud of our branding. So just to be able to brand a space and to have people come into it, we found really fun.
So, I mean, what's next for TKO? I mean, you guys definitely hit the ground running. I mean, the 4 series launched immediately when you guys went live December. I know that you guys have been promoting pretty heavily the upcoming Jeff Lemire story arc. The Pound for Pound by Natalie Chaidez. I mean, what else can people expect in this year or 5 years down the road? What's next for TKO?
Yeah. So our next wave of books, which are The Banks by Roxane Gay and Ming Doyle, and Jordi Belair, and I always say the full Ariana Mar is lettering that one. Sentient, which is Jeff Lemire and Gabriel Walta, and Gabriel Walta is actually hand painting every panel of that book, which is incredible.
That's impressive.
Steve Wands is doing the lettering for that one. Eve of Extinction, which is Salvatore and Steven Simeone wrote that one. Nick Varela and Isaac Goodhart are doing the interior artwork. Ruth Redmond is doing the colors. Ariana Maher is also lettering that one. That was a survival horror story. And Maria Wynn is doing the covers. It's incredible covers. And Pound for Pound, Natalie Chaidez, Andy Belanger, Daniela Miwa, who colored Fearsome Dr. Fang, and Sergei Lapointe is lettering that one. Those 4 titles will be out. We're looking probably like July, August of this year. So we're going to have a full other wave of books coming out in the summer. And then we're putting together the 3rd and 4th wave of books. As you can probably tell, like, because we're releasing them when they're all done, the lead up time is pretty significant. So even for wave 2 of books, they're launching this summer, but we've been working on them for a while.
That, man, you got me really excited for what's coming up next, man. And see, I want to once again just thank you so much for the time for the time to chat. Once again, man, it just lends to the fact that TKO is just accessible and down to earth, and I'm a believer that you guys are the new modern day comic book publisher. I really believe that just from our conversation.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
This was awesome. I mean, this is really, I really appreciate you taking the time. And like, again, like we love speaking to podcasts and our fans. And, thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Oh, it's an honor. Shortbox Nation, look, unfortunately, that is the end of our time. Once again, I want to thank Z so much. And more importantly, guys, go to TKOpresents.com and check out any one of these series. I think what we forgot to emphasize is the first issue is free. Like that's definitely something right. That I don't think, you can't really go to a comic shop and ask for, hey, can I try that first issue out for free? But TKO lets you do that. And I think that is such, a sense of like trust and just confidence in their products. So Shortbox Nation, please go to TKOpresents.com. Check out any one of their series. My two personal favorites, Fearsome Dr. Fang by Z, as well as, Sarah by Garth Ennis as well. I guarantee you TKO has something for you in the level of attention to detail and just delivering an overall great comic product. I mean, it's something you have to experience for yourself. Z, do you have any last comments that you want to share with our listeners?
No, yeah, I think, visit TKOpresents.com. You can follow us at TKO Presents across all social platforms. We're very active on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook, and we're starting up a YouTube channel where you can find us as well. So that's at TKO Presents. And if you want, you can follow me. I'm at the Z Chun. So TheTzechun. I'm on Instagram and Twitter.
Thank you so much, Z, man. Enjoy the rest of your day. Have a great weekend, and hopefully this won't be the last time we hear from you.
Thank you. You too.
All right, sir. Bye.
Yo, what happened to peace? Peace.